Myself have worked in the finance industry for over 10 years. I've worked at Goldman Sachs, HSBC, Morgan Stanley, similar to this guy on your screen right now who's worked in accountancy firms at a very senior level for many years. So we both have, over a decade's worth of experience each. And we both went through the quiet quitting process in the finance industry, right? So what would that involve? That would involve essentially working at a particular company and putting in less effort until they make you subject to a layoff. They potentially let you go through redundancy, give you a severance package, pay you off essentially to leave the company because you're putting in less effort at work. Maybe because you're unhappy with the lack of promotions, the lack of pay, workplace politics, disagreements with your manager. There are all types of scenarios. So I'll talk you through a bit about my experience quiet quitting, and let's listen to this accountancy expert and his experience quiet quitting here.
So I think most people get it. People understand the situation. When you work for a company, the company wants to maximize their profits. This involves squeezing the maximum output from the employees and paying the employees as little as possible.
So this is good, simple point to make, right? You're working for a company, they're going to see you as disposable. You're just another person passing through. You're there for a few years, even if you're there for a decade or two. That's a blip. That's a small time frame in this frame of a massive company where you've got very senior shareholders. You're seen as quite disposable. So never forget that aspect of that, right? You might want to be the most important person or put your life, work and effort into a company. But at the end of the day, you're just another employee there. Even if you think you have an important role and your co-workers like you, you're just passing through for a couple years, couple decades maybe, until they get rid of you for someone who's going to do the job for a much cheaper price. So don't get too attached to the company, and that's important when you are quiet quitting. Don't get emotionally attached. Don't get worked up about politics at work. If you're going to quit a company, just become a bit more detached, do the bare minimum, and focus on the next move, whether it's another job interviewing elsewhere or your personal finances and business.
Performance reviews, at the end of the day, I just dreaded just going into the office. Now, I put up with this torture because I was young and naive. I thought that if you work hard and you do what's best for the company, then the company, you can rely on them to take care of you, to reward you properly. Well, 1 year goes by, it's time for my performance review. I'm like, hopefully I get a big raise. So they call me in and they say, Brian, you're doing such a good job. You are such an asset to this company. So that's how the conversation starts. I think, wow, this conversation's off to a really good start. I like where this is headed. And then they tell me, but as you know, we're going through a recession. However, you're such an asset to this company. You're doing so good. So we're going to be generous to you. We're going to give you a 2% raise. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. When I heard that, I was in disbelief. I was in shock. I was like, you guys cannot be serious. So I busted my ass off for the whole year for a lousy 2% raise. Now, I thought immediately I would have been better off if I was just slacking off, just doing the bare minimum, and I would have been okay with a 1% or a 0% raise. So anyways, from my perspective, my thought process.
So this is very important. Now, particularly for anyone out there who's hardworking, or maybe if you're from my background or his background, which is a typical Asian background. He's of course from East Asia, I'm from South Asia. We have this very strong work ethic mentality that, if you work hard, you're going to succeed. And I think that's kind of naive, or maybe that works when you're studying at university or doing your professional qualifications. If you study hard, you're going to do well in exams, right? But if you work hard in an office environment where they want to keep pay static, they're not really going to give you major pay rises. It's more about office politics and who knows who rather than what you know or how hard you work. You're going to become disillusioned and you're going to have a trigger moment. And he had his trigger moment when they offered him a 2% pay rise after he's working hard, that maybe he should be putting in less effort because so many other employees are putting in less effort. They're getting paid round about the same, working extremely hard, putting in 50% more effort at work and getting a 2% pay rise isn't worth it. You might as well put in the average work or slightly below average work and still get paid the same thing, or maybe a 1% or 0% pay rise, rather than burn yourself out. And that's very important. And many people develop this type of mentality after learning it the hard way because you don't want to accept it, that's your reality. This system is kind of constraining you and sticking you in a position where even if you work hard, you're not really moving forward. And that's very disillusioning to a lot of people, and it's very difficult to deal with. And in those cases, if you are working for a company like that, that's when you should quiet quit like a boss by putting in less effort and then looking at your other options and realizing if you're not rewarded for your efforts here, find another option that works for you. From my perspective, my trigger moment was kind of similar, where I was working hard and putting in a lot of effort at one of the major investment banks. I won't name the specific company. And I noticed that, okay, well, what's the difference between people who succeed and people who don't succeed, or the people that are here long term and people who get laid off? Because these banks, as I'm sure you know, they typically fire people all the time, right? And over time, my strong ethic of working hard or trying to be good at my job and working timely in a timely, efficient manner, that wasn't being rewarded. But people who would be like sucking up to management or kind of being talkative and friendly in the office and playing office politics, they would succeed more. And once I learned that, I realized, well, maybe this isn't the right thing for me, because I like to work hard and I thought I'd be rewarded appropriately. But if I'm not going to be rewarded appropriately, maybe I won't be working hard, right? It doesn't make sense. And the thing with me, and probably with some of you watching this, I'm not so good at the kind of sucking up to management, laughing at management's jokes, goofing about in the office, doing what people who very rapidly got promoted 2 or 3 levels above me, even though we started at the same time at the same level, they would get promoted very quickly because they would use these tactics. They would do a bit of work, then they'd walk around the office to all our teams, because our teams were on different parts of the trading floor and different levels, and they would just chit chat and schmooze and flirt with the female colleagues and joke around with the male colleagues, talk about the football, talk about some politics or whatever's the hot topic in the industry. And then sometimes when we had like serious technical questions, and I'd be answering them from traders and salespeople, and he would just ask questions that would make him look dumb on emails. And I thought, hold on, how's this guy getting promoted 1, 2, 3 levels above me when he doesn't know some basic technical information? And it was clear, like, that's how you play the game. It's not really how technically skilled you are. It's about schmoozing in that type of way. So that's an interesting lesson here that I learned, and you've learned a bit about his experience. So let's listen to the next clip here.
So this is what I did. I told myself that I need to get out of here. I need to get out of this job. So I decided that I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to start my own tax practice. But I was recently out of college and I had no money. So I decided that I tried to get clever. I decided to slack off at work. So I'm going to slack off at work. I'm going to collect a paycheck, and I'm going to start building my tax practice on the side. So I decided to do the bare minimum amount of work, just enough to get by at work and not get fired. Now, you were expected to get into the office around 8:30 a.m. and people are usually leaving around 5:30 p.m. So that was the norm. So I thought, that doesn't work for me. I'm trying to build a business here. So I rolled into the office typically around 9:30 a.m., a little bit late. I'd leave a little bit early at 4:30 p.m. Now, when it was lunchtime, people would take like a 20 or 30 minute lunch break. They would go to lunch around like 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. I took the full 2 hours. I would take 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. as my lunch break.
This is quite funny, right? Taking a 2-hour lunch break in the finance industry is kind of unheard of. People typically, like you said, take maybe a 1-hour lunch break, or they eat their lunch at the desk. Even if there's not that busy and there's not that much work to do, everyone has to give the impression they're super busy. Even if you can take an hour break in your work day, which seems perfectly reasonable, they want you to be at the desk pretending you're busy, responding to emails, eating one bite at a time while you're typing emails. This is the type of ridiculous environment you are in the finance industry at times, so it's something to be wary of. If you want to go into the industry, which I have been in for over 10 years, and this guy too, is be aware of perception matters more than reality, and you're going to have to keep up appearances, the way you dress, the way you talk, even the interests you have to align with whatever the company is focused on, right? So when you are planning your escape and you are quite quitting like a boss, what you need to do is to get out by using all loopholes to maximize your time and energy to pursue your goals and not the company's goals. Your money, energy, attention, and time it should be dedicated to your personal goals, not the company's. So if that means you've got to take a longer lunch break, and on your lunch break you're doing a quick online course, maybe 1 hour a day of learning about digital marketing, for example, or you're going to take 1 hour a day during your lunch break to speak with clients on your side business and message them and send a few emails out, or you're going to spend 1 hour learning a new language if that's somehow related to your future goals. If you're going to leave a company and they're going to fire you because you're going to put in less effort, just try and make it really work for you, exploit every loophole. If people are going to arrive, if you know who arrives the latest in the office, arrive a little bit before them, so you're not seen as the laziest person on the team. You're maybe the kind of second laziest. People won't notice things, and the moment people start leaving the office, you after 1 or 2 people in your team leave the office, get ready to leave the office. Don't leave too early, don't arrive too late without pointing a finger at yourself and standing out as someone who's slacking. Do everything you can to slack without appearing as someone who is slacking. That's quite important. And there are all sorts of different loopholes. If you have team events after work you don't want to go to, just say you've got a family commitment, you can't make it. If there's any other type of charity event your company's doing, just say you're busy that day. You can always make up dumb excuses until they take a hint that you're not really interested in working there. Those are all important things to do. And let's finish up with this last clip here.
Your boss or your bosses, they're going to catch on pretty quickly. If you're going to quiet quits, I would recommend that it be a gradual progression. So a gradual process. Like I didn't jump into 2-hour lunch breaks immediately. I had to work my way up there. You start showing up to work a little bit late. You start leaving a little bit earlier. And then you get a little bit more bold, just a little bit. So it's a gradual process, little by little, bolder and bolder as time goes on. Because if you're too bold, just right from the get-go, it might be too much of a shock to management and then you might be at risk of getting fired immediately.
So that's very important there, right? If you're quiet quitting, you're taking it step by step, slightly longer lunch breaks, arriving slightly later, leaving slightly earlier. What you want to do is maximize how many months they're going to pay you until you do quit, right? So eventually, you know, co-workers are going to notice, the boss is going to notice, but you can really stretch this out for 2 to 3 years if you're strategic and you don't drop your performance too dramatically. And that's why in my advice in some of my other videos is that when you're working a job, you don't want to push things so far that you start working so intensely at the start. If you set the bar too high at the start and you're working too hard, too intensely, you are going to stand out as someone who's kind of really overextending themselves. And then they're going to expect this high performance throughout your work environment, throughout your time working there. So what you need to do is essentially, when you start a company, figure out how much effort people are putting in, what times they're roughly working, how much work can you get away with doing and not doing, how much effort should you put in. Don't go in putting in 120% effort. They're going to expect that every day. If everyone's putting in about 60 to 80% effort, which is typical, do about the same thing, right? 60 to 80% of effort a day. Got kind of fly under the radar, be seen as a good worker or slightly above average worker rather than exceptional or low performance. And that's how you kind of fly under the radar and put in less effort and don't burn out. And then when you're quiet quitting, you can slowly drop the working standards without being too obvious with it. And then other things is when people are pointing out about you quiet quitting, like managers, oh, you're putting in a bit of lesser effort, and then you start standing up for yourself and disagreeing, like, well, actually, I'm not putting in less effort. I'm maybe just sticking to the work hours that we have. It'll end up creating an issue. That's the point where quiet quitting, and I've dealt with this myself, where quiet quitting can become quite difficult, is that you stand up for yourself and then your boss sees that as defiance. You need to be a little like slave, a pauper, a peasant who's just doing his work, a labor peasant. But once you stand up for yourself and say, actually, no, I don't think there's an issue with my work output, then you start having issues at work. So try to keep a low profile and figure out what the bare minimum is. And then also when you're working on your future plan, calculate roughly how much layoff payment or severance payment you'll get. So if you're fired from a job, right, how much money could you actually get? Do you think you're going to get 2 months pay, 3 months pay, 4 months pay? Typically it's dependent on how many years you worked at the company. So there's all sorts of different things you should figure out for yourself before you are dealing with a layoff. And always consider that when you are doing quiet quitting, it does come with some extra stress, right? And anxiety, because you know there's a lack of job security. They've potentially got their eyes on you to fire you at your company, given you're not following the high work ethic that they require. And it's not necessarily a long-term solution. You can't go from one company to another company doing quiet quitting. You will get found out, and people in the industry might be talking bad about you as being a low quality employee. So maybe you can do it on one occasion here and there, but it's also not long-term solution. You need to find something you're passionate about that you can profit from, a side business, like other income sources, and that will be a long-term solution to your financial freedom and through doing a job that you actually enjoy. And you want to be engaged with your work for your own interest and your own well-being, your own physical, mental health, your own your life. You don't want to be going, oh, I'm going to quiet quit forever from one company to the next, or just be stuck in this low effort mentality, which some people do get put in, and then they end up with low pay, lack of job options, lack of job security. You should only do this in specific circumstances where you got a plan that's actually going to work for you, and that's very important. And then speaking of plans, I offer one-to-one career coaching. There is a link in the description. I can speak with you directly, talk you through quiet quitting, talk you through many other different workplace strategies that we can use to navigate this difficult job market, difficult career corporate world that we're all been challenged with, particularly in recent years. It seems to get difficult in the last few years. I've worked at some of these other companies. I have some experience of dealing with those very difficult scenarios. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to help with you directly and find one-to-one solutions for you. Thanks for listening. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.